Hello everybody. So I recently got a request to just show off some text editing commands. I've been posting a lot of videos where I edit some text, and I know I haven't really been describing what I'm doing exactly, so I think it'd be nice to have a single video where I do that. Now, I use Vim key bindings inside of Emacs and also inside of Vim itself when I'm working on servers and stuff. So I figured the easiest way to do this would just be to go through Vim Tutor. I'm obviously not going to read all of this to you, and I recommend you try out Vim Tutor on your own because it'll help just to practice some of this stuff. But I do have screen key set up, and I'm going to try to not only go through what Vim Tutor suggests, but also give some of my own recommendations, point out some cool stuff that I like to do as we go by. So the first thing they show you is moving the cursor. So you can, of course, move the cursor with the arrow keys in Vim. But, as they show here in the very first lesson, the best thing to do is to use the H, J, K, and L keys. Alright, before we go any further, actually, I'm about to use a binding that I use a lot, which is ZT. So that takes the current line and puts it at the top of the screen. So that just helps me recenter, so I can see more of what's going on. So, as we said before, like this little diagram shows, and as I've been showing, J moves down, K moves up. So a lot of the times when you're watching me, you'll see me just like mash J and K a bunch of times. That's just kind of a tick, I guess, that I do when I'm waiting around, because that keeps you on the same line. I don't really do H and L because they're not quite so conveniently placed. So that's the first thing, moving the cursor around. Yeah, so using the down key, move to less than 1.2. So I can do ZT again to move that to the top. Now if I want it centered in the screen, I can do ZZ. You'll also see me do that a lot. You can also do ZB, but that's a little bit less common, at least for me. So let's put that at the top. Okay, of course, exiting Vim is actually not something I do that often, because I'm usually in Emacs. Now, because of evil mode, you can do WQ, but it's going to close your Emacs window if you only have one window open. So I usually try to avoid that. Yeah, and of course, escape key, make sure you're in normal mode. We'll talk about insert in a second. The next thing you're going to do a lot is deletion. So actually, I don't use this that often. Press X to delete the character under the cursor. Yeah, so we move. Well, I'm skipping ahead a little, but yeah, you can hit X here to delete the cursors, and of course I hit U to undo. This is pretty much, these are kind of the basics. Let's see. Now what you would do more often here, let's see, so I guess in this case X is a good fit. So we got X, and then of course W jumps you to the next word, B takes you back a word, you can do E to jump to the end of the word, Shift E is not that convenient when you're editing prose, but when you're in code, for example, the capital versions are really useful, so W versus W. Because W will skip you past, so if we hit W, you see how it takes me to the period? Because that's like a new word. But if we use a different definition of word with Shift W, that jumps to the next thing. Okay, insertion, of course, you press I to go into insert mode. Now, one thing to remember is that I drops you into insert mode before your cursor. So if I type A here, that's going to change it. That's going to put the A before the N. What you want to do if you're sitting somewhere and you want something after is not to hit I arrow key. That's what I used to do, and I used to hate that. And then I finally learned about the next section here, appending. A to append. Do they tell you? Wow, yeah, they teach you capital A, actually. So Shift A puts you in insert mode at the end of the line, which is very handy. Regular A just puts it right after the cursor. So a lot of the times when you're editing something, you don't actually want to hit I, you're going to want to hit A. Now, just like Shift A, you can also do Shift I to put your cursor at the beginning of the line. Now, if you didn't know about Shift A or Shift I, the way you'd probably do that is you could use 0 to go to the beginning of the line, and I, or you could do $ to go to the end of the line, and A. But, of course, those are common operations, so Vim has them as Shift I and Shift A. Now, the other reason you don't often just hit I isn't just because you're appending after the cursor, it's because wherever you are, you were going to open a new line. So the reason I say open a new line is because the key binding for that is O. So that inserts a new line and puts your cursor on it. Let's undo that. And then Shift O does the same thing above your cursor. So that's very similar to pasting or putting in Vim terms, where if let me yank this line with YY. If I hit P, that puts it after the line I'm on. If I hit Shift P, it puts it before. Let's see, anything else? Editing a file. Yeah, so you'll see me type :W a lot in Emacs. Again, I usually leave off the :Q because I don't really do that on Emacs, but you can do that. Let's see, so :W. Lesson 1 summary. What did we learn here? HJKL. We learned how to open Vim, exit Vim, delete a character. Okay. Insert, append. Cool. So another thing you can do is you can hit Ctrl+G, and it will tell you how far into the file you are. So down here at the bottom, you can see we're 19% of the way through. So we're actually making pretty good time, I think. Now, deletion commands. This is why I was saying X actually isn't that common of a thing to do. So you're going to have, we got DW to delete a word. Yeah, and so this is a really important thing to remember about Vim, is that all of the keys are basically action, motion. So all we're doing here is we're combining the delete action with a motion. Now, you can also combine these with numbers. So if I say D3W, that deletes 3 words. You can do 3X to delete, to X 3 characters. I can type 3J to go down 3. Let's see, what else? Down here, of course, I showed you 0 and $, so you can combine those, $, to delete to the end of the line. Another way, there's also a shorthand for this, just like we saw with the with Shift A is a shorthand for $A. Shift D is a shorthand for $D. Now, something else to remember, I showed you guys yanking, YYP. Yanking and deleting go to the same place. There's a special register for, I think is what Vim calls it, for, in Emacs it's called the kill ring. So you'll see if I delete and I hit P, it's the same thing as YYP. Well, it puts back the same thing when I hit P. Yeah, end of this line twice. Now, something really handy that I think Vim Tutor does get into later are that these motions extend to what are called text objects. So you can't just do like D word, you can delete, so let's say I'm in the middle of a word. If I D word, that deletes a word forward. But I can also do delete inside word, and you see it deletes this word. Or I can do delete around word, and it deletes the white space as well. So see how there's a space remaining? Now this extends to things like sentences. So if I do DIS, you see it takes that whole sentence. That one actually doesn't work in Emacs, which is a little bit upsetting for me. But see, DIS deletes that whole sentence. In Emacs, it would actually do this. It would DIP, which is delete in paragraph. So if you ever see me accidentally delete a whole paragraph of text, it's probably because I tried to delete inside the sentence. Okay, so here's where they explain what I was saying. Operator plus motion is how you get a lot of power in Vim. So I've already talked about this. W, E, B takes you back. To go to the end of the previous word, you do GE, which is, I would always do BE for that, right? GE, what's the difference? Yeah, of course you can do DW, DE. So this is a subtle difference. DW deletes up to the next word. DE deletes to the end of this word. So knowing all of these is actually helpful because they do slightly different things. I've already talked about this, using a count for a motion. Move the cursor to the start of the line below. Yeah, 2W, 3E, 0 takes you to the start. Now there is something, so you'll see if I jump to the end of the line. If I hit 0, it takes me to this. there's also a key for taking to the first character. So that's like 0W. And that is caret. I basically never use that. Actually, in Emacs, most of the time it seems 0 seems to do that for me. So evil mode works slightly different than this, but that's the idea. Okay, we have seen this, using a count to delete more. You can also extend this to DD. So I can do like 3, DD, and that deletes all of these lines. Yeah, D to delete 2 words. Here, while they're talking about uppercase, something I don't use very often is GUW. So this, like, uppercase is, well, obviously in this case it lowercase a word. So you do G, Shift U, W to uppercase it. That's pretty handy. Another thing you can do is hit tilde. That swaps the case of whatever character you're on. So what I often did before I knew about G, let's see, U in Word, is I would type VIW. Wow, you can't see that at all, but I'm in visual mode. And then I would just hit tilde. Okay, let me switch color schemes. Oh my. Can you see it at least? Okay, you're not going to read the text under it, but at least you can see when I'm in visual mode now. Sorry for the jarring transition. Let me... Blue... Oh, perfect. Okay, good. I found a different color scheme. Okay, detours, so we handled that. Operating on lines. I've already talked about DD for delete the whole line. One thing that is useful also is not having to do deletions and insertions separately. So you can always do DD and then like Shift O to start typing again, right? But what's often useful is to hit C, and you'll see I'm already in insert mode. So C is like for change. So you can also do Shift C. It's just like Shift D followed by going into insert mode. So that's how we can operate on lines. What do they want us to do? DD, delete the line, move to the fourth. Okay, let me show you, because this was actually a recent request, and it relates to visual mode, which I just changed the color scheme for. There are at least three kinds of visual mode. So the first one I learned about is triggered by Shift V, which is, as you can see in the bottom left, visual line mode. So in this case, all of your operations are on lines. So if I have this visual selection, I can delete it, I can, and then to reselect that, I can type GV. I can yank it, you'll see that copied it. What else can I do with it? Probably anything you can imagine. So this is actually what I use most of the time, instead of doing things like counting the lines, and instead of, like, basically always instead of 2DD, I would either DD, and then I would use period to repeat my last motion, or I would even DD. Before I would like 2DD, because I hate having to like look at it and count. Because there's some point, right, where you're not sure if you should count or not. Like you might be able to, like, I can tell 2DD. I might actually do that. But if it was like 6 or 7, it's like, well, I don't. How sure am I that it's 6? But so we talked about visual line mode. That's Shift V. There's also just V. So this is kind of the basic visual mode, but it's not quite as useful in my opinion. So you'll see in this visual mode, it doesn't follow the lines. This actually just follows the characters. So I can delete something like this. Now that's often what I'll use in Emacs to take care of a paragraph. So I can do something like, or a sentence, like DIS. I can do something like V/ period. Oh, well, that's a regular expression character. That wasn't a good example. But I'll do something like VEE to delete that. While we're on this topic, the way you search in Vim is with / or question mark. So move, you can see it searched forwards, and if I do, it'll search me backwards. You can also search within a line. So you do that with F, comma, or sorry, you do that with F, and then you just type the thing. So in this case, you can only search for individual characters. So F, comma, now I'm back in whatever. I'm not still searching. That's not the case with slash. That's how you do like a full search. So like I can keep typing here. And I can also type regular expressions here like you saw with the period. See, it's matching every character. Let's see. Let's search for, how about Fi? So to keep searching within one line, you can hit semicolon. So that jumps to the next match in the line. And then when there's no more, there's no more. It doesn't wrap to the next line. To go backwards on that search, you hit comma. So semicolon, comma, I can keep searching for I within the one line. If I'm at the end of the line, I want to search backwards, I can type Shift F, I, and then semicolon and comma have their meanings reversed because I'm searching backwards. That's the same thing when you're searching with slash. And let's say I type move. I can hit N to jump to the next thing, and then Shift N takes me backwards. Whereas if I search reverse, then those two are reversed as well. Okay, so the next thing I'm about to do, this is great. I'm just catching myself right before I do something, I try to explain it. So to scroll down a page at a time, you can hit Ctrl+f. That one is usable in Emacs, so that's kind of more useful for me. So forward is Ctrl+f, Ctrl+b is back a page. You can also do Ctrl+u and Ctrl+d, but both of those have different meanings inside of Emacs, so they're not quite as useful to keep in mind. We've kind of covered undo. I basically never use Shift-U, but that's good to know actually that it fixes a whole line. So that'll revert all your changes in one line. Did I miss anything else here? Now I have kept you waiting for actually what somebody asked me about in one of the comments, is the third form of visual mode. So we've got visual mode, plain visual mode. We've got, that's triggered with V. Then we've got Shift V, which is visual line mode. Lets us select whole lines. Now the most probably interesting is Control V. This is called visual block mode. So you can see I can select just this part of the line, and then I can delete that, and then it pastes as a block as well. So this is really, really handy. Like if you're editing tables of data or something, like I do oftentimes when I'm writing papers, I need to like switch columns. I can just visual block the whole column and move it over. It's just really great. I can undo that. Something else you can do is, what if I want this to be like a double arrow? I can select all these dashes and I can do R equals. I don't think I've actually talked about it, but R stands for replace. So you can replace an individual character. You can even hit Shift R to go into replace mode, where you just replace everything your cursor's under your cursor. Oh god. Alright. Yes, and Control R is redo. So redo, undo. Yeah, so visual block mode is really, really, really powerful. You can also, you can select something, and then you can hit Shift I to insert before it, and then you have to hit escape twice. Let me undo that. I can also Control V to select, Shift A to put stuff after it. I can do stuff like $, and you can see now I can put stuff at the end of every line. I would often have to do something like that in LaTeX. So visual block mode is really, really powerful. You can do all kinds of exciting stuff in it. Let's see, what else? One last tidbit about selection is that if I hit colon now to type some command, I want to perform some command on this region, it defaults to this, and this is actually just text that you can type in yourself. So this single quote, less than, comma, single quote, greater than, is how you type in your last visual selection down in this command buffer, or your command line thing. So you can actually do things like substitution commands here. So that same thing I just did with visual block mode, I can do with a substitution. So S is of course for substitution. And then you have to have some kind of delimiters. I think slashes are kind of the most common, but I could also do something like hashes. They just have to match across the board. So let's replace that with equals. And there you see, we made 7 substitutions on 7 lines. So that's another way you can work on stuff like this. Okay, good. We handled undo. Yeah, undo, redo a few times, fix the errors. And then, let's see, we can also run these commands without a selection. So if you do :s, this is a substitution on the current line. So let's do something like, well, I don't know, that'd be a little tricky regular expression. Like you could delete like doubled characters or something. Okay, I think that's all. We covered 3 types of visual mode. We covered replace mode, plus all the stuff that's actually in here. Let's see, DW, DE, $, DD. You can prepend things with numbers. That's actually quite similar to Emacs with like the universal argument stuff. Format for a change command, operator, number, motion, as you see here, D2W. Start of the line, end of the line, undo, redo. I think I've shown this pretty well already, the put command. Yeah, to put, you can think of it as P for paste, but the technical term in Vim is put. So we can yank and put, we can put before the cursor with Shift P, we can delete and put, Now the nice thing is that putting doesn't actually, it doesn't like clear your clipboard, which I guess is normal. You can just keep putting it in there. Okay, type DD, move the cursor. Oh, I can't resist showing this. So, when you have something like this, you can, well, first of all, okay, Ctrl-G is an Emacs thing, Ctrl-C usually helps you in Vim. In EX mode, which is what's triggered by this colon, I think, you can run shell commands with an exclamation point. So that just shows me this. I just LS'd. What you can also do, though, is pipe your selection through a shell command. So this is one of the big differences between Emacs and Vim. So Vim, you often rely on things like this because you need to leverage the power of other tools on your system to do the stuff you want to do. Emacs is more of like an enclosed system where you usually try to leave things inside of Emacs. But for example, if I wanted to reverse these, I can pipe these through tac, which is like the opposite of cat, and it'll see how it reverses it. If I just filtered it through cat, it wouldn't do anything. But I can filter it through tac. If I wanted to replace these with just the count of the number of lines, you know, I can pipe it through WC or whatever. Alright, replace command, RX. Yeah, so RX. What else? Anything else here? Yeah, so this can be useful if we wanted to just replace the whole thing. I can go into replace mode, which is when this line was typed in. You see, I'm just typing the whole way across. That can be useful sometimes. A lot of the time, it's more useful to just hit R. If it's just one character. And yes, this is what I use more often, is to use the change operator. Because usually it's not just one character, it's like a couple of characters. So you really want to change like the rest of the word. So CW I use a lot. Yeah, while we're on C, I've already talked about some of this stuff, but one other text object, it's not just limited to like C in word or C around paragraph. One of the most useful things you can do is actually delete inside parentheses. So you see, it jumped me, it found the parentheses in the line and deleted them. This is one of the most powerful text objects. I can also do CI parentheses, and you can see I'm in insert mode inside the parentheses. I use that so often. You can do that with parentheses, curly braces, double quotes. I doubt I can do it. Yeah, okay, it doesn't recognize inside asterisks, but that's just fantastic. I think I can do it with these as well. Yeah. So basically any kind of brackets, any kind of quotes, that's very, very useful. Yeah, like I said earlier, CC changes the whole line. More changes, yes. You can change 3 words. So once you start thinking about Vim in this way, like action, count, motion, you can just start stringing all this stuff together. So C is change. It's just English, right? I want to change 3 words. So I hit C3W. I want to delete inside paragraph, DIP. Once you start getting these mnemonics for the keys and understanding the model that you're working inside, you can do just amazing text changes. Which is why I love using evil mode inside of Emacs. So I get that tight integration of my whole system that is a strength of Emacs relative to Vim. And then I also get just the sheer power of manipulating text that Vim gives me. Okay, sure, I showed you guys Ctrl+G. You can also do, I'm sure we're about to get, yeah, press Shift-G to move to the bottom of the file, GG to the top. Now, something I'm not sure they'd show you is manipulating, or jumping through the jump list. So, it'd be somewhat disastrous if I couldn't recover where I just was. But I can hit Ctrl-O to go to an older place, and you see here, I'm back here. And then I can go I to go to newer places. So O-I. The other thing I can do, which I was kind of expecting was why they would tell you to do Ctrl+G, was for, I can take this percentage at the bottom of the file, excuse me, and I can actually jump to a percentage in the file. So let me go back to the top, and instead of Ctrl-O this time, let me just type 51%. And you can see that I've just jumped back to that position. Now to do something similar within one screen full of text, I can use H, M, and L. So you see H takes my cursor to the top of the screen, M takes my cursor to the middle, and L takes my cursor to the bottom. So these are somewhat related to the like ZZ, ZT, ZB things. And of course you can combine this with things like visual mode. So I can do like Shift V, Shift M, and I've just selected the bottom part of my screen, and I can delete them. I can undo that. It's just amazing. Then, yeah, sure, the search command. So I just hit L to jump to the bottom, and now one other nice thing to do are the curly braces. So these basically move by paragraphs. I don't use these probably as often as I should, but they're pretty handy for moving quickly, right? So I can do stuff like L, and then, okay, I'm a couple paragraphs away from where I wanted to be, so I can do something like this. Oh, they do tell you about this. To go back where you came from, press Ctrl-O. Yeah, it's very helpful with searching as well. Matching parentheses. Yes, this is very nice. So if you're inside of a line, oh wow. So what it's showing us now is that we can jump to the matching parenthesis. So you'll see I'm on this parenthesis now, and the next time it's closed is way down here in section 6.4. What's more useful, or more usual, is that I'm in here, and you see it jumps me to this first pair. So this is really handy. This is similar to the DI and the delimiter thing. Again, you can also do change, or like DA for around the delimiters, and that will delete the delimiters themselves as well. Yeah, so percent is very handy. See, it jumps me to the enclosing ones, and then back and forth to the other. Yeah, very useful in debugging a program with unmatched parentheses. You've probably seen me do something like this in Emacs Lisp already. Okay, great. Now it's teaching us how to do substitutions. So this is basically, instead of having to go out and use something like sed, you can basically type sed commands directly in Vim. And fortunately, evil mode implements this functionality as well. So I do this a lot in Emacs. Now the stuff in here, these are regular expressions. So you can do really, really powerful things. For example, I had, I think I showed on one of my videos recently where I added an analyzer to my LSP mode setup for Go that helps me realign struct fields to align them better and to save memory. And in some of my files, after I changed that order, I was getting terrible errors because all the structs I had made in one file didn't have like field labels, and they were now all in the wrong order. So I wrote a regular expression that extracted each of those fields separately, and I could put them in a new order using like back references. So this is really, really powerful. One benefit actually of doing this in Emacs that's great is that it shows you the matches as you're working. So you'll see if I type :s old new g, nothing was highlighted. Whereas in Emacs, as I was typing old, it would start matching this as I type each character. And then it would actually show me the replacement being inserted. So that's actually, there's probably a way to turn that on in Vim, but I've never had it set up. Yeah, so % changes them in the whole file. Knowing G is very nice, because that's global to the line. So it's not global to the file, that's what the % is for. And then C is also very handy if you're not totally sure about your regular expression, because that will actually prompt you. So let's say, let's go back here. S old new G C. See at the bottom it's now asking me if I want to replace this. It's like, okay, I actually wanted to replace that one, but this one's inside of a string, so no, I don't want to replace it. Okay, lesson 4. Did I miss anything? Control G, Shift G, Shift G, G, G. Yeah, you can also do Shift G moves you to the line number. As you can see, I don't have line numbers turned on, so the only way to know what line number I'm on is like this. So 583. Let me jump to the top. Another way, so you can do 583 Shift G. Another way you can do that is with :583. And now I think the difference here is that this :583 doesn't actually go into the jump list. So that can be a pro or a con depending on what you want to do. Yeah, we got Ctrl+O, Ctrl+I, %, substitution commands. I've actually already talked about this. See, Vim Tutor is actually pretty expansive. We haven't gotten anything about visual modes yet, but we're only 60% of the way through. So sure, we can execute external commands with :. You can also, while we're here with the S stuff, another nice thing is you can do global commands. So for example, let's say I want to find every line that starts with some spaces followed by, or like at least one space followed by 1 and a period. Then I can say norm to go into normal mode, and I can type DD. So you'll see that just deleted all of the lines that started with 1 period. Let's put it back. See how it's deleting all those lines. So that's like a global thing. That's really useful if the thing you want to perform on it. I can also do, alright, let me hit : and I can hit Ctrl+P or up arrow to do the same thing. What if instead of that, I want to, sorry, what I was going to say is that this is useful when the action you want to perform isn't limited to, something really easy in, like a substitution. I can do something like norm A space / /. You'll see I've now added this to the end of every line. Something like that. So that's really handy to know as well. Lesson 7. Okay, good. So cool, we covered, so we got external commands. If you haven't heard of it also, you should look up Vim Golf. So it's basically a challenge to try to perform some task inside of Vim in the fewest steps possible. So this is where I refined a lot of my Vim knowledge. I think I'm on the leaderboard for a couple of problems. But people, it's really interesting, like because it's every character. So a lot of the time, actually, I always would try to go for like a G command, and it turns out doing stuff like hitting 2 W's, right? :G is the same number of characters. So it gets a little silly. All right, type the familiar : ! Yeah, we did this example with ls. Yeah, any command. Cool. More on writing files. Yes, you can write to another file. You can also save as and so this is basically W but then become the new name. So if I'm in some file, I can save it as some other name. You can also do stuff like :E. So if you do it like this, it will try to revert the current change. This is like revert buffer in Emacs. But you can also do this with a different file, like temp something else. I can edit some other file. So it's really handy. Yeah. I'm trying to think of anything else. Selecting text. Yeah, you can also combine that. So this will write the selected text to a new file. So you don't have to like yank it, close Vim, open the new file, put it in the new file, that kind of thing. Press colon. So this is them telling us about visual mode. Press V. Yeah, visual selection. Retrieving and merging files. Yeah, this is also very handy. You can read in another file. Something important to point out is that most of these things are abbreviations. So :W, is always how you save a file, but it's short for write. And you can always type out the whole thing. So you can do write, you can do read. What else can you do? E is for edit. All of this stuff. So just like, colo that I typed earlier is short for color scheme. So if you are using plain Vim, I believe people consider it good form to use the full command names when you're writing like your vimrc or some kind of Vim script. But obviously when you're in the editor, you want the shortest thing you can get. Yeah, you can read ls, you can, if you don't want to replace the contents here, you can actually write to an external command, and then it doesn't actually affect your text. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Or one thing I have to point out is that if you ever try to write stuff into awk, and you want to do something like printf, %5s, or something like that, you have to escape this %. Because, yeah, you have to escape the % because Vim expands % as the name of the current file. So you will get some ridiculous substitutions if you try using printf inside of awk without escaping your % sign. I've run into that so many times, and I only fairly recently figured out what was going on. Because it happens in Emacs as well. I was like, well, surely in Emacs it would take care of that, but no, it does not. Alright, so we got :W, V, W, R. Okay, I talked about this earlier. You can type O to open a new line. You can also Shift O to do it before the cursor. Type some text, press escape. One thing, if you like, is you can also exit insert mode with Ctrl+f bracket. I know some people prefer that. I always just mash escape. Alright, append. It seems very strange to have this at the very bottom. Okay, we talked about A, we talked about E. Yep, AI. This is a big difference though. The only difference between A and I is where the text is inserted. But so many times I've typed I right arrow before I found out about A. When I first started using Vim. And I see people still doing things like that. Another way to replace, yeah, this is kind of like an interactive replace mode that we were talking about. Shift R, 456, copy and paste, YYP. You can also do things, you can do Shift Y, but that's actually the same as YY. That's very surprising compared to D, right? But if you actually only want to yank to the end of the line, you have to Y $. So keep that in mind. J $. Type P. Yeah, another thing to keep in mind is that if you're doing this line-wise thing like YY, then it's gonna paste a whole new line. Whereas if I delete like part of this line and then put it, it'll keep it inside the same line. So the same with Y $. What else? But if you do something like this, let's say I do YY P, and then I actually meant for it to go together, I can do Shift J to join the lines. So that's a good one to keep in mind as well. Shift J. Shift J is really handy. It also works with the visual selection. So I can do something like this. So I can join all of those lines together. Now, let's say you're writing a paragraph, or you're writing a whole paper in LaTeX, right? You have, this is all one line. So obviously when I hit J and K, it goes off the line. Well, it looks like the line to me. So if you want to navigate by what looks like a line, you can hit GJ and GK. So K works on actual lines. This is helpful in visual mode. So you see I go down one line, selects this whole thing. Whereas I can do GK, and it moves my cursor just the one. Now, let's say we want to recover from this, because this looks ridiculous. I can type GWIP, and that will format it to this nice width. In Emacs, that's a little easier. I can just hit Meta Q, which you'll see me doing a lot if I ever do a LaTeX video. But GWIP also works in evil mode, and it's a good one to know. You can also do GQIP, but you see that put my cursor here at the end. GWIP leaves your cursor position unchanged, so that's what I usually prefer. So that's really nice for keeping your formatting nice inside the buffer. While I'm looking at it, a way that you can realign text, so change your indentation, is with double less than or double greater than. So that one's really handy. It also works with the selection. I can do something like that. Undo. I can do this. GV. GV. I can hit period again to repeat my actions. Just moving stuff around. Very, very handy. Let's see. Set an option to search or substitute. Okay, this is getting a little bit more specific. Yeah, set HL search. So this kind of stuff would be more useful if you are actually using Vim rather than evil mode in Emacs. So we got OO, we got AA, we got E, we got Y, we got P, capital R. Set options. Prepend no. Alright, getting help. We're not too worried about getting help. You can type help. Quit. How do I quit Vim? Okay, this is actually a bit useful though. So you see it open this split. Let's say I want to navigate back to my file. I can hit Control W, Control W. Or I think I can do Control WK. That's helpful if you have multiple, if you have like a bunch of things open, you can just navigate between them. Now let's say I want to quit this one. Well, good thing I did help quit, because I can :Q in just that window and it'll close it. Okay, help key if you have help key. Who has a help key? We press F1. I actually don't even have an F1 key, but I can hit function F1 of course. Or function 1. Help. Yeah, you can create a startup script. Ah, yes, completion. So you see, Vim actually has this really nice completion thing built in. And I triggered this by hitting Control N, which seems like a very Emacs-like binding. Command line completion with Control D. Yeah, of course you can tab here on this. What else? Not in compatible mode. But what I think of in completion is Control N. Like, I can just start completing stuff inside the line. Now, it doesn't know about your language. It's just, I think it's completing things that are just in the buffer already. But even that's pretty nice. That's like a meta slash in Emacs. Let's see. Import files. Completion works. Lesson 7 summary. Help command. Help command. Okay. Well, we reached the end of Vim Tutor. It took, yeah, about 45 minutes. But really, with the time that Vim can save you, that's a very small thing to invest. I'm trying to think if there's anything I missed. The big thing I think that was requested was the visual block stuff. I think that's pretty much it. That's really all I can think of. That's certainly the basics. And you see that the Vim Tutor actually covered the basics pretty well. The next time I do something really adventurous in Vim, I'll try to make a video about it. But that should be pretty much it. I mean, even just this stuff with like moving characters, J and K, you know, keeping your hands on the keyboard near the home row, and stuff like Shift L, Shift M, Shift H, those are really helpful, I find, for moving around quickly. Because stuff like that basically moves you faster than you could like hand off the keyboard to the mouse, click where you want to go, and then get back in line. So anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and hopefully you'll be able to follow me when I'm doing stuff in my other videos now more easily. And as always, thank you for watching. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments and I'll try to do a video. I've been getting great suggestions from the comments on videos to do. So thanks again, and see you next time.